Hello, let me introduce myself. My name's Catherine Nolan. You can call me Kat or Kath. I think sometimes Vietnamese people like to call me Cat, you know, like pussycat.
Yeah.
Cat. Because I think it's easier to say, and it's kind of a fun name. I quite like it, so always happy. And I really, I wanted to meet as many students as I can today. I believe that there will be 9 students travelling, or either travel, I think 5 as a group travelling to Phnom Penh, and then we will have another 4 from Ho Chi Minh who might be joining us. And then, or I don't know what the mix is, maybe some who already live in Cambodia joining us too, which will be great. I think that's a really nice size, 9. It means we will probably have 3 small groups of 3, because a big part of MBA work is working in groups. I know that some students, this is their first subject doing their MBA, their executive MBA. So all of the students will have quite a bit of experience. They're involved in their own businesses. They will bring some of the learning. So you'll be students and teachers at the same time. And then a couple of students, I believe, are just going to do this one subject to see where, you know, if it helps them with their businesses and to think about doing the MBA.
Yeah.
So without too much more fuss, let me share my screen here. So you should be able to see a slide that says design thinking, kickoff webinar. And as we go, there's a few things I want to talk about, but mainly my focus will be on explaining the first assessment task to you, because you need to do an assessment task before you arrive. So on the very first day, you're going to come. Now, at the same time, I recognise that you don't get a lot of teaching before you do this task. The big reason for doing the task is so that when all of you arrive, you've all definitely done the same reading, and that you definitely arrive with work that we can hit the ground running with. So, yeah, don't overstress it, but at the same time, it will give you a good feel for how much work you need to do, and particularly there's quite a lot of reading. And with an intensive class, often you have a lot of reading beforehand, and sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense, because if we're doing the class 1 every week, you read a little bit, the teacher helps you understand it, helps you understand why it's important, then you read the next bit, and then that happens again. But with an intensive, you kind of have to read a lot, and it might not all make sense the first time around. Don't worry about that. Read it, make notes about what your questions are, try and make as much sense of it as you can. But you will, with an intensive, then you come with your questions, makes for a great class. But also when we finish, often you'll have to go back again and you'll be able to work out what the important things are. And I try very hard not to give you too much reading beforehand, because I would rather you did a little bit than ignored a lot. Sometimes it's a big pile, it's just too much to do. And I try to make it as relevant as possible. But believe me, I know it won't all make sense at the beginning. And because I want you to read effectively a whole book before you come, and I know English is not the first language for most people in this class, it's a pretty easy to read book. But at the same time, I want you you have to read at least the first 6 chapters, but you're best off to read the whole thing. I thought I had a copy of it in the room with me. It must be out in my other room. My house is such a mess. But the book is also, it's available online. So you'll be able to access it straight from the library. In fact, you can borrow it, I think only 2 or 3 days at a time, just to have it on your smartphone and just read it that way. Yeah, it costs about, in Australian dollars, it costs about $30 to buy the book. So I think that's around the $25 US mark. It could be something that's useful to you, but ideally, I don't want you to have to buy anything. And it's a popular book, so it may well be available in libraries that have books available. And we've got somebody else who's joined us. So we'll introduce ourselves in just a second. I hope you can see and hear. Oh, they've gone, whoever that person was. So, who am I? I'll introduce myself. As you can see, I need to get an updated photo. That's about 5 years old. And
you look very great on
yeah.
the real camera. You look great.
I need to get a new photo taken. So I'm actually, I don't like to call myself an academic. In fact, I call myself a pracademic, which is a made-up word. I'm a practitioner or a practical person who happens to teach in a university. So my background, if you continue on to a whole of an MBA, I can't remember who's doing what at the moment. I know there are some and some who aren't, but you'll get access to a range of fabulous teachers along the way. They're so great. And some of them will have PhDs. In fact, most of them will. And I have what's called in Australia equivalency based on my professional achievements. But you'll find people who study really deep and narrow areas, and they know absolutely everything about their field, and they publish research all the time, and they're just an absolute depth of knowledge.
Yeah.
And then you will also meet people who have been incredibly successful building businesses or running marketing teams, or basically being the kind of managers that you want to be.
Yeah.
I suspect I'm not the manager you want to be, but I fit into that second category because the other thing that's weird about me, particularly in the MBA program, is I'm a lawyer. So I've spent 30 years either I've been a partner in a law firm, I've been in-house counsel in a listed company, I've been an entrepreneur, and I've headed up, particularly in the financial services or financial products industry, I've headed up teams that have created new financial products and built new businesses. I've taken 2 companies to an IPO, an initial public offering, that have listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. And so I've been intimately involved in the management teams that have grown businesses.
Oh.
And I come from a very traditional, logic-based profession, the law. So lawyers, it's a lot about reading, translating what the law means and what cases mean to, in my case, I'm not a litigator, I don't do disputes work, but to create contracts and to negotiate deals and to create new businesses, which I loved. But it's a very traditional way of doing things. And I'm probably more of a person who is quite a creative person. My hobbies include making art. They include, actually at the moment I'm a runner, which is not creative particularly, but I'm a very diverse person. I like to look at lots of different things. So basically I learned about design thinking by doing it in creating new businesses. When I started doing it, I'd never heard of design thinking. In fact, nobody had really heard of design thinking. It's a relatively new discipline as such. But what we started to do over that time is then I could see things that worked, and I can see a lot of things that didn't work. And so then I began to study more and became more involved in design thinking research. Because I was an entrepreneur, sometimes entrepreneurs don't make very much money. So I ended up teaching in the law school at RMIT, which is how I met the people in the graduate school. And so I got more involved in that balance of doing both. And I think it's really interesting. Law is what we would call a disrupted profession. The nature of the way we practice law is changing dramatically. And the way that it works, I spent a lot of time thinking about and using design thinking to think about what the practice of law is going to look like in the future.
Yeah.
So that's me. That's my credentials for being with you. I guess along the way I became a teacher, and it turns out I really love teaching. I love working with people who are investing in themselves. I've always worked well with young people in the organisations that I work in, and I love people who want to learn. And so I have a great time teaching. I took a group to Vietnam the last 2 years from Australia and got to know some of the people in your campus in Ho Chi Minh, and they really liked what I was doing, and they thought this would be a good way for you guys to start your MBA as well, is learning from someone who has, instead of the deep knowledge that the PhDs have, having that breadth of experience, because design thinking will give you a lot of tools that you'll be able to pick and choose, use in your own businesses straight away, but also use them over and over again in the work that you do. So this is actually, I'm telling you about me, particularly as there's only 2 of you in here at the moment. I won't get you to introduce yourselves now. We're going to all get to know each other really well over 4 days. It's going to be like completely intensive. We'll be best friends and we'll all hate each other at the end of it. It's always a very intense experience, but we'll get to know each other when everybody's there, and I've got some fun ways of doing that. And of course we'll get to know a new city, but ultimately this is all about you. You're the one who's making this massive investment in your future. It's an expensive thing, not just in terms of money, but in terms of your time. I mean, you know, you're already spending time with me now that you could be with your children in circumstances, or you know, you need to be at work shortly. So I just want you to know I get it, that this is about you. And so it's really important that if you need help or if you have questions, particularly in this first subject when you have to get to know the systems and everything, you just need to reach out. If I'm not the person who can help you, I will find out who is. And so remember, this is about you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is a really important starting place for you all of you is that you need to make sure that you get inside the Canvas shell. So Canvas is just the name of what the software or the website that houses this classroom. Technically it's an LMS or a learning management system. But I'll probably always refer to it as Canvas. So and it's pretty important that you navigate a couple of things in particular. I'm just going to make sure that the pen's on so I don't mess around here. And so a couple of things that in particular, the modules area here, is it going to draw for me? Yeah, the modules area there is really important, because in the modules, and from the 1st of November, a lot more materials will come up for you. But that basically outlines all of the things. It's got guidance that's in addition to the text. It's got hyperlinks out to the textbooks and the other readings. It's got little videos in there that you can watch. There are a lot of resources. I can show you how, but if you want to, you can actually export that out into a PDF or into an e-text, so you don't have to just connect to the internet every time. You might find, if you've got a smartphone or an iPad, you might find it helpful to just have it there all the time so that you can go back and forward and have a look. And so the way to do that is you actually go into the settings area for you. This is the student view, and I already can't see. Oh, that's right. You go into your own account, and in there it'll say settings. And one of the things that you can do there is download an ebook, and you can open that up. Again, you'll be able to just Google to find out how to do that, but often people find that really helpful. I'm going to show you the assignments in a second. The other thing that is really worth looking at is this syllabus area. So just clicking on that there. The syllabus area, hello. We've got someone new with us.
Yeah, sorry, I just got some problems, so I joined a little bit late. Sorry for that. So keep going. I'm gonna make my introduction later.
That's okay. We'll all be in Phnom Penh before we know it. So is your name Lynn? Is that right?
Ling.
Yeah. Kath. you'll introduce everyone else. This is being recorded, so you'll catch up on the early stuff very soon.
Okay. Okay.
So make sure you have a look at the syllabus.
I will disturb we will away a while. I will join back later in 10 minutes. Okay?
Okay. Tell your children to watch when they cross the road.
Yeah.
So it's the syllabus area is really important because it will list out the dates of everything that's due, and I will put in little to-do tasks as well there to just remind you to get your reading done and like that. The calendar area for that is really helpful as well. So you can actually see a calendar, and if you use Outlook or Google Calendar or whatever, you can even send a calendar feed so that you can see it on your normal calendar on your phone or your PC if you use it. The other thing that I think is really helpful is this super gorgeous button here, the help button. If you hit that, if you're having any troubles finding anything or understanding how to submit your assessment tasks or working with Canvas, if you click on that button, it opens up, and there's a chat that you can talk to. It works 24/7. They're all based in America somewhere, but I find them so helpful. And the other helpful thing that you have, I hope, is me. So you send me an email. You can do that from within Canvas, or you just send me an email anyway. Or you have, we'll set up that WhatsApp group. WhatsApp is probably for Vietnamese students, those students, the easiest way to contact me. Just use my number to send me a message. And we've got another joiner, and we'll sort you out. So I think this is Anne. And we're all recorded, so we'll fix up at the end, because otherwise I'll go over time and you won't like me, and I want you to like me. As I mentioned before, what's going to be really important is that you read this book, which is available online. The links are there. You will need to use your RMIT credentials in order to access the library materials. But and I know it's a difficult thing. It can be quite overwhelming to think, I've got to read this whole book. There are lots of pictures in this book. And it really will, you need to read at least the first 6 chapters before we arrive in Phnom Penh. And you'll need to read the first 3 chapters just to do the first tasks. But you will find that it is a really helpful book. And the more that you've read, if you can have at least skim through the whole thing before we arrive, that would be fabulous. So, I'm not sure who that is, who's got something. I think it might be you, Anne. Nice to meet you. I'm going to mute you, though, at the moment because of that traffic.
Well, we find it's women war. There's no man at all.
That's good. I think that we're going to have a good time. I haven't actually worked out what our gender balance is, but between you ladies and I am more than happy if it's all women. I think we'll get a lot done.
Okay.
And it might be nice to have a couple of minority men so they can find out what it's like to be in the minority.
Yeah. Do you mind? I have something else to do because I'm preparing for my work now. So it's quite have some kind of personal work to do right now to prepare for the work. So do you mind?
If you're able to listen at the same time, that's great. But I'm recording as well, so you can come back and watch the video later. But if you can listen in here, you'll be able to call out if you've got questions. So we're going to spend quite. Yep. Just feel free to come and go, because otherwise we won't finish. So it's all good. But it's nice to see you. So there are 2 groups of assignment tasks. It's a bit confusing. I put the individual task, even though that's group 2 first, because that's the first thing that you have to do. And you'll see that we're going to talk quite a lot about this second assignment next, or this first assignment, the pre-course assessment tasks. But you can see over the course of the course, you actually will have a number of things that you have to do. And the group tasks, everything except for the report, will actually be done while we're in Phnom Penh. So you'll be assigned to your groups on the first day, and then we will also, so on the first day, on the second day at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're going to submit your first assignment as a group. So you're going to be working really hard. Yep. Okay. It's not there's not a lot of words, but you will have to work as a team to get it done. It's worth 2.5% of your overall mark. So it's not, there's not a lot of pressure attached to it, but it'll make you work together as a group. And then on quite late in the day, I think it's 10 p.m. on day 3, you'll have your next group assignment. And then on the 4th day, the final day, the groups will need to present. The other assignment that you'll be doing while we're in Phnom Penh is, it's an individual assignment. And that's a presentation assignment, an individual presentation where you'll be speaking to the group. So we will practice that. You will have plenty of opportunity to learn how to do it. But one of the things that you'll find doing an MBA is, in fact, that's one of the reasons people do MBAs, is so that they can walk out with strong presentation skills, that they can explain their ideas and their solutions quickly, clearly, concisely, and with impact. And that's what you'll be practicing while we're in Phnom Penh. And then the 2 tasks that you have afterwards, the first one will be group report, where you'll be pulling together a report about your project that you did in Phnom Penh. You'll work out how to manage that. From memory, that's due 2 or 3 weeks after we get back, and you'll still work on it as a group. And then in mid-January next year, each of you will be asked to do your major piece, your individual piece. So that's the biggest assignment. It's worth 45% of your overall mark in the subject. So in many ways, it's the most important. And as a consequence, we'll talk about that when we're in Phnom Penh as well, and work on some strategies to make sure that you can do the best you can to challenge yourself and stretch yourself to get good marks. But also I hope to make sure that this task in particular helps you in your own business right now.
Yeah.
So anybody got any questions, concerns, frustrations, thoughts about that before I move on? Because I know assignment tasks are the things that make people nervous.
Yeah, it's kind of nervous. Anyways.
When you will have them, you will think of those questions, and just feel free to ask me.
Okay.
So this slide is going to move. I've just made a little GIF just to show you how to find the first assessment task. So when you're in that assignments area, sorry, I'm looking down now. It's not that I don't like you, it's just that's where my screen is. Basically, you can show your assignments by date, or you can show them by group. When you click on them, it gives you everything you need to do for the task. Now, I'm going to talk you through all of this today as well. So that can look a little bit overwhelming, but actually you're going to be fine. Really, even though it's an assessment task, this is a task to get you ready for this the first day, so that we all start in the same place. And I'll share these slides with you later as well, by the way. But before we talk about what you actually have to do for the assignment, I think it's really important to actually have a quick introduction to what design thinking is. Have any of you heard the term design thinking before you enrolled in this course?
No, not really.
Probably not. No, it's not something. I mean, you've heard words like strategy, and you know what strategy is. And you've heard about financial planning or budgeting or business plans. All of those are things that you're expecting to do in your MBA. And things like leadership and managing people and human resources. Again, all things that you're expecting to do in your MBA. And yet we start an MBA with this thing called design thinking. And so I think it's worth just reflecting and saying, okay, well, what is design thinking? And how is it relevant to an MBA? And why is it for business? This is design thinking for business. So that's what I want to talk about right now. So before we even unpick that, when you hear the word design, what do you think about?
Design.
In design. It's kind of
I think about design. So you mean design like as in what things look like? Planning?
yeah.
Plannings, designing, and I think I have a lot of projects, something like this. I want to make it into real projects.
Oh, you're a visual thinker. I like you.
Yeah.
I like you all actually, but you know, visual thinkers, people who think with visualization.
Yeah.
Design is traditionally, the word design is usually associated with visual things.
Yeah.
So what does something look like? What's it, what does it, you know, we know the difference between, like, all chairs are chairs, but the design of some chairs is different from the design of other chairs. So all chairs are for sitting on, but, you know, I have a chair behind me, which is clearly not for sitting on, it's for putting my junk on, but it's red and it's leather and it's clearly, it's not for working on, is it? That's a chair for sitting on and drinking tea and talking to people. It's not, as opposed to the chair that you might be sitting on at your office or on a bus. The design of the chair is different depending on what it's for. But design is also about functionality. It's not just what it's for and what it looks like, but how it's used. And ultimately, design thinking is about centering around the needs of humans in a business context. So design thinking is often also referred to as human-centered design, putting humans in the center of a problem-solving situation. And any business or institution revolves around humans. That there are human customers, there are human workers. Every person who experiences a business is a human. And so what we're trying to do from the very beginning in the RMIT MBA program is to think about how we can understand the people, or the stakeholders is the language we use, the stakeholders who interact with us and our businesses, to better serve them, and with a view to growing and maintaining the sustainability of our own business, and looking for opportunities that humans will want to pay for effectively. So a little bit of language to get ourselves started here. So the quote here is that design thinking overcomes the limitations of conventional, rational, or strategic thinking by putting humans in the center. So design thinking is often referred to as using abductive reasoning or abductive logic. That's language that most native English speaking people would not immediately recognize. Abductive logic is about starting with observation and looking for the simplest explanation. So using your observations of the world to find the simplest explanation for what is going on, looking for opportunities and gaps, as opposed to deductive logic, which is about deriving consequences from assumptions that you make in order to test whether or not something is true. So deductive logic, think of it more like algebra, where we solve for x, that, 3x is 6, so I can deduce that 3x, that the x must be 2. There is no other solution, that we always have a logical solution. There's also this idea of inductive reasoning, which is making inference based on observations or correlations. So a famous version of that is the English people up until really 250 years ago believed that the bird swan only came in white, because they'd only ever seen white swans. But when they came to Australia, there are swans that are black. And so the correlation was, it turned out not to be true. They had induced or inferred from only seeing white swans that there was only one possible solution. And design thinking is about looking for many solutions and then ensuring you have the best solution. So ultimately, design thinking is about joining creative thinking and critical thinking together and taking the best out of both of those worlds. So what about this? Is this an example of design thinking? Somebody has thought about introverts, you know, introverts, people who are shy or who don't like to get their, you know, to make a fuss in public, don't like to speak in public. They've thought, well, maybe this will help them. So do we think this is a good design thinking solution? My daughter, I'm not an introvert, but my daughter is an introvert. I cannot imagine her going and sitting in one of those little things because they look so weird. So introverts don't like people looking at them. So even though, yes, it might be nice to drown out the noise of everybody else and to be able to read your book in peace, introverts, if you think about the person that they're trying to solve this problem for, the last thing that an introvert really wants is people walking past and looking at them and wondering why they've got this funny helmet on their head. I think this is a ridiculous example where people have not actually thought about what their end user needs. Another good example of what design thinking is not is this particular example comes from Bic, who make pens. It's a few years old now, but they decided to make these really pretty pens for women because women need to have sparkly pens. And it was a complete failure for them. On social media, there were people writing these kind of things, you know, like, you know, it's a miracle, I can write with this pen. Or I love this little man here who's, you know, like with his face, like he's scribbling because he can't use them with his pens. They were pilloried left, right and centre because they weren't really in touch with how women were thinking. Women don't need to pay $2 extra for a pen just because it's pink and sparkly.
Yeah.
Now, to be quite frank, I'm the first person to go and buy a pink and sparkly pen. I don't know if you have it in Vietnam. There's a Japanese, it's called the 200 yen shop, Daiso, and they sell all sorts of cute pens and pencils and textures, and I love to go in there and treat myself with some, but I'm doing that because it's fun and it's inexpensive and it's who I am. To actually, for somebody else to tell me that that's what I need to do, it turns me off completely. So this funny little cartoon, I think, really helps you understand. A tanning bed is great because it's 100% solar powered.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's, again, this is a solution to a problem, which is not thinking about the user. So my favorite example of thinking about design thinking is going to start on this slide. So again, I took this photograph in the UK actually, many years ago now. And you can see, if you look in this photo, it looks pretty ordinary, right? There's a path here, these two gates. We've got a busy road over here. So presumably what's happening here is that the path has been created with these gates, what do you think, to slow bicycles or walk down. I will tell you this is a cycling and a walking path. So they've made this, they've designed a solution to slow people down so that they don't ride out onto this busy road. What happens? People don't follow the rules. They're in thinking of this design.
They go
Thinking,
Oh,
well, it's like, in fact, what I really need here, and I just haven't taken the photos, is sometimes I want to take photos of the traffic in Vietnam. Like, I don't understand what the traffic lights are for because everybody just, you know,
people go so many
But exactly, it's just like the traffic lights are designed to do something, but they're not taking the humans into account. Okay,
Exactly.
and humans, okay, and this is, you know, it makes sense. I mean, by Vietnam standards, that is not a busy road, but this was very early in the morning. You can see like there's trucks there, there's all sorts of stuff that's going on, but this is actually quite a busy way. And if you go through here and straight onto that road, it could be quite dangerous. But again, this would indicate that nobody's actually slowing down. So design thinking is about looking for solutions to this, you know, and look, maybe it's as simple as filling in the gaps, I don't know. But design thinking is about really looking at, well, what's the problem we're trying to solve? The thing that we're trying to do is we don't really want to slow people down for the sake of slowing them down. We want to keep them safe. That's the problem. But this is not the solution to that. So that's what we're doing. And why are we doing it? We're doing it because the world is changing. We're entering into a new age in which everyone's ability to innovate is going to matter as much as their ability to read, write, and to do the maths. That one of the most important skills that business people need to have these days is problem-solving skills, but creative problem-solving skills in particular. And so we're going to start you right from the very beginning in your MBA process of really starting to understand what it means to be a creative person. So design thinking is all about solving what we call wicked problems. So a wicked problem is actually a term that was coined in the 80s in the design or architecture area. And designers talk about a wicked problem as being a social or a cultural problem that's difficult to solve for a range of reasons. So it could be that you have contradictory or incomplete knowledge. It could be that there are lots of different people, stakeholders involved, lots of different opinions. There could be significant economic issues. So a really good example of a wicked problem is child hunger, global child hunger. Hugely complex, so many different stakeholders involved. And that it's interconnected with lots of different issues. So if I use child hunger as a result, as an example, it's a wicked problem because there's lots of different reasons why children might be hungry. In the Western world or in fully developed countries, that can be because they are neglected. Through to in Africa, and in the third world, it could be because they are, there is a famine. Often, particularly in developing countries, and Cambodia could be a very good example of this, it could be a lack of knowledge. It could be a lack of access to clean water or infrastructure. It could be because of a lack of education. It's a whole range of different issues. Lots of different people, you've got government involved, you've got NGOs involved, you've got mothers of the children involved, you've got charities all over the place, lots of different conflicting points of view. Some charities want to come in and bring religion along with food, adds another layer of complexity because it affects culture then. Hugely economic issues that are involved. If you think about trying to address child hunger in places like Africa. I've been involved in some projects in Uganda. Actually, Uganda is it's a beautiful country. It's a really tropical climate. Things grow really well there, but everybody grows bananas. So if the only natural food that you can eat is bananas, you are going to have malnourished children because they won't have the right balance of nutrients.
Exactly the same experience when I've been in Africa last 3 weeks.
Oh, you've been? Oh, I'm looking forward to talking to you about Africa.
I went to East Africa and I saw the soil is so fertile and they have enough water, they have everything, but they don't farm anything. And all the food is imported from South Africa and other Asian countries. So it is very, very different.
Yeah, so that's why it's a good example of a wicked problem because you can sort of see a solution, but clearly there's something that's happening there. Other features of wicked problems include sometimes the solution can depend on the way the problem's framed. So the bicycle example that I just showed you before, if we talked about, if the problem was how do we slow bikes on the path down, That was a solution to that problem.
Yeah.
And if the problem is, how do we stop bikes going too fast onto the busy road? That was not a solution to that problem. Also, stakeholders can have different, often radically different worldviews and frames for understanding what the problem is. That's particularly the case in, if we think about government versus religious charities dealing with food issues in Africa is a really good example of that. Also, the thing about wicked problems is if you nudge one thing, if you pull one lever one place, it might solve the problem somewhere, but it creates a new problem somewhere else. So wicked problems aren't problems that can be solved with just great old-fashioned deductive reasoning. You can't just solve for X. And creativity by itself is rarely enough in this kind of context either. So when you're reading these materials, you're going to be looking at the difference between design logic, so that abductive logic I was talking about earlier, and your analytical logic and your creativity. And you're going to be asked to use both the left and the right side of your brain. Now, there's plenty of science now. The scientists among me tell me, well, it's not as easy as we have a creative side and a logical side, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. It's a really good analogy for thinking about how, as humans, we balance our logic and our creative side. So design thinking is not always going to be the best tool for the job, and sometimes it will never be the only tool for the job. So it will never be the only tool for the job. So this comes from the materials, have a look later, but it's a good idea to think about before you go to solving a problem. One of the things I know about design thinking, some of you will just fall in love with this as a way of thinking, but you want to apply it to everything. And it doesn't apply to everything. There are some things that it's just easier to solve for X because that's all you need. But it is a great way of thinking about complex problems. So this little model on the screen is the model that comes out of your textbook. And this is actually going to be how we're going to run our 4 days in Phnom Penh. We're starting now with the what is stage. That your first assignment is going to ask you to look at understanding the world as it is now, and I like to call it falling in love with your problem. Really starting to understand what your problem is, and you're going to start doing that by understanding some stakeholders who might be involved in the problem. And on day 1 in Phnom Penh, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be sticking with the what is. Then the fun bit, the what if. That's the stage where we're going to envisage a new future. We're going to do some things to find creative solutions or potential solutions for the problem. And then we're going to work into what's called the what wow stage. And the what wow stage is ultimately about making choices, about working out which of these fabulous ideas you've come through are the most likely to work, how we're going to use them, how we're going to make sure that they're the right solution. And then we're going to start our 4th day. Your task will be to pitch effectively as a group to our client, and our client turns out to be RMIT University this time around. You're going to be pitching to the university what you think they should do about this problem. And the problem is that they want to engage more RMIT alumnus or alumna who live in Southeast Asia, and we're going to look at Cambodia in particular. What should they be doing in Cambodia to support people who have studied at RMIT, whether they're Cambodians who went to an RMIT campus in Vietnam, or they went to Melbourne in Australia, or if they're Australians or Vietnamese who have ended up working in Cambodia, what can the university do to continue to support that community? What is that community looking for? So it sounds like a pretty simple problem, but let's see what's involved. So,
excuse me, can I leave the conversation because I have to go to the hospital right now?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I hope she's okay.
Yeah.
Do let us know, yeah?
Can you send me this email, this PowerPoint?
Yes.
To the emails, okay.
Yeah. Well, what will happen is you'll get an email when it's up on Canvas, and you'll be able to link to it. So good luck with it all. We're waving. So
excuse me. Excuse me. So you have, if I have any questions, I wait till the end of the presentation, or I can ask now?
Please ask now.
Okay. So I went through the pre-course assignment, and I just read down that we have to choose a persona on of alumni
Well, actually,
in
how about I
Cambodia.
do hold you, because I think that's the next slide, or the next couple of slides. I'm going to walk you through that assignment task. Okay. So I just wanted to provide the context in which we're doing it first. So basically, this task has been designed to hit the road running, and effectively there are a number of steps that you will need to do, but basically the deliverables are this third step, where you'll be designing a persona, you'll be creating a stakeholder map, you will be recording the research that you did, and then you've got one more visualization task that is a little bit more personal to you. And so let me talk to start off with about the trickiest one, because everything else falls from that, and that's the persona creation. So again, as I cautioned at the beginning, sometimes you just have to trust me a little bit with this, that you're going to do this task and it might not be abundantly clear why, but it will become clear when you bring this work with you and we start using it when we're in Phnom Penh. So a persona profile is an informed summary of the mindset, needs and goals typically held by a key stakeholder. So our wicked problem is helping RMIT work out the best way to support its alumni in Southeast Asia. And we're going to focus particularly on Cambodians. So Cambodians who've studied at RMIT and who are, or people, any people who've studied at RMIT who are now based in Cambodia. So in order to solve a wicked problem for this stakeholder, we need to get a picture in our mind of who that stakeholder is. So each of you need to create that person. So they're a fictional person. So it's not a real person. It's like a character in a book. If you were writing a book about a person who had studied at RMIT and is now living in Cambodia, you would need to give that person a character. You would need to understand what was important to them. You would need to think about what they looked like, how old they were, who their family was, all of those things. And you would base that on research. So you wouldn't just create, we're not talking about a science fiction novel here. You're not writing about a robot that studied at RMIT or a dragon that studied at RMIT. You're trying to imagine a person, okay? So that person isn't a stereotype. They want to be a real person, but they need to be based on some kind of research. So the kinds of people you might consider international students. So Cambodians who went maybe to Melbourne and they studied an undergraduate degree in Melbourne and now they're back in Cambodia with their families.
Okay.
So again, already I haven't done the research yet. You're going to do that. But my guess is that somebody in that situation is probably from quite a wealthy family because it costs a lot of money to send a student overseas.
Overseas, yes.
And so that's one thing I already know about them. If they were born in Cambodia and they're an international student that way, well, to start off with, they're going to have a Cambodian name, right? So calling this person, we're all women, calling this person Mary Jones doesn't make any sense, right? They need to have a Cambodian name. How old are they? Well, my guess is they're not 60 because RMIT hasn't been around that long, and unless they basically left Cambodia before the early 70s when the troubles in that country began, then chances are they've been born since. So think about that. Like again, a little bit of research about Cambodia would help you with that archetype. Could be an Australian student, so who's moved to Cambodia. You might find that, you know, maybe that person is called Mary Smith. Maybe she did an engineering degree and she went to Cambodia to work on a water project somewhere in Cambodia, fell in love, has stayed in Cambodia, has a Cambodian husband or wife, or, you know, again, a little bit of imagination, but it needs to be based in reality. Could be someone who works for an NGO. Who else? Who else could it be? Again, I want you to be creative about it, but I want you to base it on research. So what research can you do? Well, that's a little bit difficult. And that's one of the things that you're going to, part of your assignment is to tell me what research that you did. I'll give you some ideas as we go. Oh, I thought that was my next slide. But while I'm talking about research, I will. A couple of things you might consider. You can go in LinkedIn. Most of you will be already members of LinkedIn, yes?
Yes.
In LinkedIn, you can search for people who studied at a university who are based in Cambodia. So you might be able to look who's in Cambodia, who studied. There's not a lot of them, but it might give you an idea of, well, a lot of them work in, you might think a lot of them work in NGOs, or a lot of them work for family businesses, or a lot of them are entrepreneurs, or a lot of them are in real estate, or that will give you some ideas to get yourself started. The other things that you can do is, we're talking about Southeast Asia, and there are going to be some similarities and differences, but all of you have chosen to come to study at RMIT. Maybe you already know other people who've studied at RMIT in the past. They might have some ideas for you about who would fill this persona, what they're like. You can also make just do some basic research about Cambodia itself. What industries are growing? Which industries are hiring people with university degrees? Those kind of things will help you. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here. What I'm looking for is a combination of your creativity, your problem solving, your ability to research and come up with somebody meaningful. Because the job of this persona is to help you understand the problem. Because if you fall in love with your problem, we'll talk about that a lot when we're in Phnom Penh, and you fall in love with your personas, you'll be able to visualize them. You'll be able to think about, well, will they want this? Do they want, do they want networking events? Or do they need to know what the latest research is about something? Or what would be interesting to them or what's not interesting to them? So how do you create them? Research, research, research. Getting out in the field and looking and talking to people is ideal. Because of the nature of this task, it's going to be hard for you to do that before you go. But one of the great things is our very first night that we're in, the second night for you who are coming from Hanoi. So the first day one of the course, we're going to have a little alumni networking drinks. So you'll get to talk to lots of different people who are in this situation. By that stage, you'll have a much better feel for your problem and you'll be able to use that. How fun is that? You get to go to a party and call it homework. I think that's exciting. So this slide, come back to it when you're doing it because we'll look at the examples, but this will help you as a checklist of the things that we're looking for. I've already spoken to this slide, which I clearly put in the wrong order. Research, I mentioned LinkedIn, your own networks. Good place to look is there are a number of Chamber of Commerce. So the RMIT is a member of the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam. And so there's also an Australian Chamber of Commerce in Cambodia. They have a website. Having a look at the organisations there will show you companies that are likely to have hired people who have Australian qualifications. So that could help you as well. But you guys will think of lots of different things. So that's your task, is to think of something, because ultimately you only have to come up with a one page. So some things to think about: avoid stereotypes. Okay, so this needs to be more like a character in a novel than just, it's not a demographic. It's not, so for example, this person will be, they'll have an age. So they might be 28, okay? They're not 25 to 29. They are 28 or 27, you know, they have an age. And really try to make sure that they're not particularly, well, no stereotypes, but no disrespectful stereotypes either. So, you know, the one that really annoys me all the time is, maybe it's my age, you know, like I'm 53. I constantly see stereotype personas of 53-year-old woman, terrible with technology. It's like, really? Why am I always terrible with technology? Why, you know, like, or why, and you know, I don't have a job, you know, and all this, just like, it's insulting. You know, yes, I'm a middle-aged woman, but that doesn't mean that I am stupid. So think about that. Make this person a real person. Don't be afraid to use pictures. Supplement with text or quote. Imagine what they would say and how they would say it. Imagine the language they use. Really strong and really important thing. And don't use yourself ever because what you're trying to do with a persona is get to empathize with a key stakeholder. You already know you, and you will make too many assumptions if it's you. So it needs to be someone else. So basically, you need to find that balance between basing your archetype on the research that you've done, but then using your empathy to make that person real. Because this person is going to help you visualize your problem, and you're going to share it. So I've got an example here. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so this is just a really simple persona, thinking about a persona diagram as representing a character, that you're thinking about who this person is. In the the pack, the template that you've got, there is this example here of, this is a genuine persona that is used by RMIT University in Melbourne when it's thinking about its own marketing to students. So they've created this persona template and they're showing you, and you can see that it's got a range of different things. One of the most important things, so you've got a blank version of this, put a photo in there. If you can't find a photo online of somebody that you think looks like your person, draw a picture. Okay, it's really important. A picture tells 1,000 words, and we get a sense of who that person is. We can tell that this girl, you know, she's got a hat, she's got the red lipstick, she's clearly, her appearance is important to her. We get a sense of who they are. The snapshot piece is really important too. That's the little story about who your person is. It's got to be based on the research. What job do they do? What do they love or hate about the time that they spend at RMIT? Is this a person who hated being away from home and is so happy to be back in Cambodia they want to never talk to RMIT again? Or is this somebody who just loved their time, their independent time that they spent in, maybe they were at Hanoi campus, and they loved it and they miss the Vietnamese coffee and they have a whole, you know, like they miss their friends there. What connections do they still have? Why do they have them? Why don't they have them? You do need to get that basic demographic data. So we talked about that already, making sure that this person is real. It needs to reflect the research, not be the research. Make this person a real person. Then there's a box of 6. We've given you sort of 6 ideas of key things that you might like to think about. I think particularly the triggers, emotions, delighters, frustrators, or I call them gains and pains. I think they're really good ones to keep with. These ones, the online behaviour and the channel preferences are really around marketing. You might think there are more interesting things to put in there. You might want to leave them out to get, again, your choice. What useful information do you think you're going to get from this persona? So I think the thoughts and emotions is really important. What do they think about when they're thinking about RMIT is a really good thing to think about here. But ones in the middle, thinking about how they like to be communicated to. What ways is RMIT best able to keep in touch with these people? Do they want personal outreach? Would they like to be on a WhatsApp group? Do they only use Skype? Do they only use Facebook or WeChat, or what is the best way to communicate with them so that they can hear you when you call out to them? And then what are the delights? What are the frustrations? So again, slide packs will be there. Think about those things. You'll get this profile, and as I mentioned before, you pick these dimensions in particular. And be guided by the reading as well as you're thinking about the personas. What are you using this persona for? Think about what's going to be important to you. What else did I want to say? So once you've done that, the next thing that you're asked to do is to identify a stakeholder and to replace with your own. So I had a bit of a start doing this, filled in a couple of them. I made up a persona of this person who, what am I calling him? I can't remember what his name is now. I think I've got an example on the next one. Oh, Chris Nguyen, I think that's what I called him. So Chris, actually here, I'll go backwards. So I started to do it to give you an idea. So I made up Chris based on nothing very much. Chris's dad is from Vietnam and his mum is from Cambodia, but he was born in Australia. And he went to RMIT, he went backpacking around the world, he ended up in Cambodia, and he's got a job there, which he quite likes. But all his friends back home, they're getting married and they're having babies, and his parents wanting to have children. And so, it's like he's trying to work out, is he going to stay in Cambodia or is he going to move on? So I made up some things. So, his boss here, his boss loves that, he can speak Cambodian, he can speak Khmer, but he can't read and write it because he didn't, he speaks it because he spoke it with his mum at home in Australia. English is his first language, but he can't read and write. So, that gives us thinking about an opportunity. Well, maybe one of the things that the university could support is with local language training. I don't know. Can you see how we can use the tools moving on? He's also keeping, he grew up in Australia. He's got his friends and family there. Sorry, Lynn?
I'm sorry, Kat. Sorry for interrupt you, but I got a meeting coming up, and
Sure.
I will watch the video again and see you in Cambodia. And
I'll see you there.
Yeah, see you guys in Cambodia.
I'm clearly talking too much, so
No.
I will just keep going and record. So I can't wait to see you in person.
Yeah, me too. And really looking forward to see you in Cambodia. See all of you in Cambodia.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun.
I gotta leave now. Okay.
Enjoy.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, bye.
So can you see what I'm doing with this stakeholder? So what I want you to do is think about lots of different stakeholders, because again, that helps us understand our problem and we move from there. And again, your stakeholders too will be based on the research. Then the third thing that you have to do is I want you to firstly put your photo in here. I think it's here. Oh, sorry, let me do that. I want to see you, okay? And most of you are girls, so there we go. I'll make you have girl hair. I want you to put a photo in there so that we all get to know something about you. Put a photo that you like, put a photo with your kids if you have kids, put a photo with your favorite person or your favorite thing to do, something that tells us a little bit about you. And then in this area, again, it's one page on an A4 page, right? So you can do this by hand if you want to, or you can use your PowerPoint skills to make it pretty, but on the day, it's one page and I want you to bring a printed version with you. So tell us who you are, why you're doing the course, and what you're looking for. What makes you excited about coming to Phnom Penh or doing an MBA? What are you looking for? What's your Why did you start this journey? In this area here, I want you to tell us what you did to create the persona and the stakeholder map. So what references did you look at? Who did you speak to? It's a great idea to include the dead ends. So if LinkedIn was no help to you, say so. By the way, you can do this with drawings if you want to. Doesn't have to be with text. I'm not looking for lots of words. I just want to know what it is that you looked at. And then this part will look little, but it's really important. Academic reflection asks you to describe an insight, interpret, evaluate, and then plan for its use. And your very major assignment, the one that's worth 45%, will be asking you to do this. So the sooner we can start practicing that, the better. So the first thing is to find an insight. Now, the insight might be something you've learned about your persona or your stakeholders or something like that. That's fine, but it doesn't have to be. The insight can be just something that just a little aha moment that you had when you were reading the materials or when you were doing the research. You know, your insight might be, mine is, for example, often, I need to understand better how to do research online. My insight is that I need to understand better the different tools that are available to me beyond the library. And so what did that insight mean? The insight means that, if I'm using that particular example, that I need to recognize that there's a lot of deep research that's happening in my field, which is important, but my field is evolving very quickly. So as a consequence, I need to be more aware of what's actually happening in industry all the time. Evaluate. Why is that a valuable insight? Because if my work's going to be up to date and it's going to be meaningful, then it needs to balance both the deep research and what's happening. And so it's an important insight for me. And plan, what's that going to mean for my future research? For me, that means that I'm going to continue to use the deep academic research. I need that to support my theories, but I'm going to be constantly looking for how there have been changes in a real world environment since that research was developed. So I'm just running through an off the top example. But again, you can see very tiny boxes, so I'm not looking for lots of words, right? I just need you to address each of that. And one of the readings that is linked gives you an example of, so it's much more detailed around what we call the DIEP model. So describe, interpret, evaluate, plan. It'll give you some materials there, but it also shows you a piece of reflective writing highlighting how those steps have been done. What else? Then the last one, this is my favorite, is you need to tell a story using pictures about either, you've got two options, either how you decided to do this course or how you met a significant person in your life. So your art skills are not relevant. This is the drawing that comes from the textbook. So the textbook explains this activity and it's about visualization again. So we'll talk about more about what it's about. As you can see, this is pretty, you know, it's pretty. Let me show you some students have done in the past. You're not the first students I've asked to do this. So some I like, you know, this is very neat and precise and it looks lovely. This person, he does great pictures. Awesome. But look at this one. I love this. Now, doesn't matter. I don't need it to be pretty. This is pen and a highlighter, and this one's telling the story. These ones are telling this. This one's telling the story of how they got engaged. This one tells the story of how they decided to do the course. This one tells the story of deciding how to deal with too many assignments, 5 in 1 week. And this one is, this was about losing weight and getting fit.
Oh.
So again, I've given you 2 topics. If you want to do something different, I'm actually happy with that too. If I can tell what it's about, you get full marks, okay? full marks for that part of the assignment. So all I need to do is, with pictures, minimum words, I just need you to visualize something in 4 panels. Okay? You need to set aside some creative fear to do that. You will need to... Yes.
Excuse me. So the storyboard is about the any kind of topic, right?
Any kind of topic.
Any topic.
I've given you 2 suggestions, but I'm happy for you to do anything. Anything at all.
Can you repeat the 2 topics that you pick up for us?
One is, how did you decide to do this course? Deciding to do this course, or meeting a person who's really significant to you. So the first time you met your husband or your boyfriend or your favorite teacher or your, you know, best friend, anything like that. A lot of my students have done, and the book suggests, if you're married, the wedding proposal. When you made the wedding, you know, like when you were proposed to or you proposed to somebody else. So anything at all. And it's about visualizing the story so other people can see it and being able to identify what other people are thinking. So when you've got all of this, it needs to be in the PowerPoint. You need to bring a printed copy with you, one side, so we can stick them up on a wall somewhere and we can all have a look and we can talk about them. And you need to put a copy, upload a copy into the Canvas, so I can give you some feedback and you can get a mark. And it all needs to be done before 8 a.m. Phnom Penh time. I probably should have made that 9 a.m. instead of doing it at 9, but you understand what I'm doing. And that's all you need to do. So, questions, comments, ideas, frustrations? I did go a little bit over time, 15 minutes over. I'm sorry about that. I'm usually pretty good at keeping to time. I think we just had a few little interruptions along the way. And I'm excited to meet you all.
Me too.
No questions? All right,
not right now.
If you have questions, basically send me an email in Canvas or send me an email, WhatsApp. As soon as all of this is done, I'll need to turn it into a video. And so within 24 hours, a copy of this recording and the slide will be ready for you to have a look at.
Hi, Catherine, can you move to the earlier slide when you're talking about the design thinking, about what's if, what's wow, and what's works?
Oh, yeah, that one?
Yes, that one.
That's a great slide. Actually, I'll go this way because that's a bit messy.
Yeah, this one.
This one.
Yes,
Can you
I have
hold on for just a second? I'm just going to
It's okay, yeah.
Just on a webinar. Rose, are you going out there? No.
Choice.
Sorry, somebody just came in the house. So now one of my dogs is inside, the other one's out.
I see.
So how can I help you with this one?
So I read the textbooks, the design for growth. I found it very, very important and very good related to my jobs.
Oh,
because,
great.
Actually, I have my own business, my company. We do
What sort of business is it, Tran?
Yeah. So we do the consultancy service. We provide service. We provide solutions to the clients especially for foreign companies who want to invest or to work in Vietnam, and so we coordinate them with other ministry and an industry involved. So actually, beside that, I have my own projects in hand, and I want to work out this based on design thinking. I understand what is and what ifs, but I not so understand about what was. Means after I define the problem, Then I build apps with the future. What is the future look like? Then after that, I will limited all the situation, all the choice, and I will make the right choice, right?
Well, yeah. So on the Sunday when we're in Phnom Penh, we'll spend a lot of time talking about this area. And the what wows is actually sometimes the trickiest area to deal with, because it's the area where we're coming. So we use these terms, we'll talk about it a lot, divergent and convergent thinking. So divergent is this idea where we go out as much as we can, we get as much, and then we bring it in. And we'll use the model, and you would have seen this in the reading so far, that we use a model which, I don't think this is going to let me draw. Yes, it is. So what we do is we think about desirability. So once we get to this what if, and we've envisaged a new future, and we're thinking about lots of different potential solutions, part of what we're thinking about is this a solution that people desire? Do they want it? And then we'll look at, is it feasible? Like, can we do it? And then we also look at, is it viable? So should we do it? Does it make financial sense? And we'll talk a lot about these things, so don't get too worried about it yet. But a lot of the work stage is about going through the different solutions that we've got and thinking about, how do we meet this test? So we're going to use the business model canvas, and we'll use the, so Alex Osterweiler's book, again, it's available online in the library for you. We'll use the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas as part of our ways of testing that. But if I talk to you too much about it now, there'll be no need for you to come to Phnom Penh.
Yes.
Very disappointing. So let's focus on what we're doing now. And so I've got something new to give you at the other end, okay?
Yes, looking forward to it. So excited.
I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. And, you know, we'll have, it will be challenging. You will work very hard. Like I said, your first assignment is, well, the first assignment's due 8 a.m. on day 1.
Yes.
The second assignment is due 8 a.m. on day 2, and it's a group assignment. So you're going to be working very hard the whole time. It's not a holiday.
Yeah.
But, you know, I know it'll be really rewarding, and it's just going to be terrific. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah. So
excuse me, and we join for the course, right?
Yeah, excuse me. So can you summarize in total? We have 3 main tasks to do before the class, right? First thing is to write about the persona. The second thing is the storyboard, and the third thing is the reading six textbooks.
There's actually 4 slides. So you'll need to get out the template, and you'll see the 4 slides. So the one that you missed there is the stakeholder. So this persona is number 1, stakeholder, summary of who you are and the research, and a story. Okay? And so tasks, and together they represent 15% of your mark. So, and if you've got questions along the way, you will ask me, and hopefully we'll get, I'll send a link to create a WhatsApp group soon, and you can also ask each other.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's better that way. We can have the group of WhatsApps, and we can talk to each other, keep in touch very often.
And I think that's great. And the reality is, you can talk about me, and if you're communicating with each other in Vietnamese, I've got no idea. So you win. So if you can ask each other questions, you can do it in Vietnamese. If you want me to hear and see as well, you do it in English, and it'll be fine.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We will talk soon. Looking forward to meeting you all.
Thank you very much for today.
See you. See you real soon.